time for our Vuelta Femenina wrap up. Now, I will have highlight videos of this. I've got some for the first 5 stages, and then I'm wrapping up the mountain stages as well on the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel. But we're going to run through this race as well. Particularly, we're mainly going to focus on the last 2 stages, to be honest, because the first 5 were, there wasn't too much decisive action. Jumbo won the TTT, and they were well drilled. I dare say Dygert. The only thing I would say from this stage was that Canyon got Dygert to pace a false flat uphill, and she just blew the doors off everybody, and they should have had her do longer pulls on different sections, and they might have won. But Dygert came back. It was her first race I've seen her in since
Omloop. I think she did Omloop.
Like a year ago.
I don't know.
Yeah, last year. She did 1 race last year. She did Omloop and then went back to America.
Yeah, I thought it was this year for some reason.
No, it was last year. She's been on the team since 2021, and this was her, the TTD was her second race day for them. Anyway, she was back. She was looking strong. There's not much more to say. There were small gaps in the team time trial. Stage 2, though, was again Dygert. Now, was interesting because she's not a pure bunch sprinter. We've got Charlotte Kool here. We've got we've got Marianne Vos, but there's no Wiebes, but Kool is a burner. And I was like, is Dygert going to go for a flyer, a finesse attack Laporte style? Is she going to trust her sprint? I couldn't really tell, but Kool just dusted Vos. Oh, Kool beat Vos pretty convincingly, Benji, but Vos looked much quicker than she has for the rest of spring, I thought, in this stage.
Yeah, she looked like similar to the level that we saw her at the Tour de France Femme last year. Maybe not at that level yet, but she looked similar to that level. And Charlotte Kool, I expected her to clean at least one of these sprints. I kind of expected her to clean most of the sprints in this race, but that didn't really keep up. I do want to say when it comes to Dygert, I agree. She kind of was like in the middle of should I attack or should I go for my sprint? And that led to it not really working out in these stages. But I will say I'm so happy that she's back at this level. It's another rider that is up there that is able to compete with the better riders and adds another woman that can win these races in some shape or form. And I'm very curious to see what she's got in the time trial this year.
She's favorite for world champs time trial. She'll win by a minute.
By a minute?
By a minute.
Write it down, people. In your little notebook. That's what you said back in the day.
In your little black book, write down Dygert wins World's TT by over a minute. If it's...
Because Van Dijk won't... will she be there by then? Probably not.
Dygert probably won't be there. And even if she was there, I think Dygert is crazy level in the TT. Now, and she's like, if you want to do a finesse attack, go with 1500.
Yeah.
Where the cost of closing you is something that a Charlotte Kool will just not do it. Yeah. And Marianne Vos will not do it. And the problem is if you go at 500, then you have someone like Vos who Henderson brings her back to 400, 300, and then Vos jumps with Kool in the wheel. It's like you got to go further enough out that it's a 1 minute, 2 minute effort. Like Simmons in San Juan is a good example where the other sprinters are like, I cannot jump this early because my sprint is finished.
Yeah.
And then it's basically you against their tired lead out riders. So she just jumped a little bit late, I feel. Next stage, she just went purely for the sprint. But this time it was Vos absolutely torched Charlotte Kool. Like they both hit the wind at the same time on different sides of the roads. Vos just torched her, which frankly I was really surprised. Like I did not expect that. And Kool second, Dygert third. So a similar top 3.
Yeah, but one of these stages was Dygert sprinting. One of these stages was...
Stage 3, Dygert just went full on. Niviadon was doing a lead out and Dygert dropped the wheel off her canyon and was kind of deep and then sprinted really late and looked fast at the finish. But I was like, again, against Vos and Kool, you're saying this is different competition.
I think she should take on the stages in the way where if it's versatile enough to the point that it's a reduced bunch, that's when you know the other teams don't have the domestiques to catch these late attacks and then attack a bit earlier than the attack she did in that one stage, because then you're able to really see the peloton look at each other to find domestiques to try and close that down, while doing it too late will cause sprinters to maybe try and follow that wheel, and then another sprinter will benefit from that and win the stage. While if she goes for the all-out sprint, she can also do that on stages where it's a full bunch sprint instead of just a reduced group, where you know that your attack won't work. So I think that's the focus point there. But if we go even further in this race...
No, this stage as well is where Riolini and Spratt lost 2 minutes 41 in the crosswinds. So it kicked off and basically the third group just got back. I mean, Spratt said she punctured at 90 Ks. I really want to know if Riolini made the front group and was made to wait, I assume she just was dropped in the crosswinds. But without Van Dijk as being there, Trek was short of a rouleur this race, a quality rouleur, and Van Dijk is irreplaceable with her level and talent. But yeah, 2 minutes 41 for Riolini, that's your GC over. Yeah, and that colored then, the next stage.
Mate.
Yeah.
Last time you said that's your GC over was in that Biden short you made.
Oh, yeah, Joe Biden. I mean, where would Joe Biden come in the Masters Grand Fondo? Is he over 80? Second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He might clip out at the finish line, though.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it depends. If you got clip-in pedals, you could probably go a little bit faster. But anyway, Joe Biden, go change your pedals. Hopefully someone has on his bike. Stage 4, from Cuenca to Guadalajara, 133 kilometers. It is an up and down stage, and the Marianne Vos we know and love. Benji was back, which it was a reduced group. Cole, I think, got in the car. She saw a hill and got in the car, which I respect, by the way, which Welsford should be at the Giro doing for DSM.
Yeah.
And they were unapologetic. They were just, DSM were like, yeah, she's refocusing on other targets now because this hill's coming up. Like, why don't the men's teams just do that openly?
I agree. There's so many teams in cycling where we are like, oh, Welsford should stop at the Crans-Montana stage and be off on a plane to back to where he belongs, in where he lives, whatever, to the sprinter areas. But yeah, we don't see it as often. Anyway, we continue. And Riolini and Spread was interesting because this goes further into the race because we're starting to get to the real, first a medium mountain stage, I would say, a 5 kilometer finish on a stage 5.
Yep.
Yes. We see action at the front of the peloton for the GC group. And in the end, the stage is being won by Demi Vollering, head of Annemiek van Vleuten. So we see a gap there of like 3-4 seconds, if I recall correctly, with Bauernfeind, Ricarda Bauernfeind. We spoke about her for quite a while now. Last year, she was riding for Canyon SRAM Generation, while this year she's for the actual elite team of Canyon SRAM. But like you said, Spratt and Riolini lost time in the Echelon stage. And here Riolini is working for Spratt.
It makes no sense. Now, I'm not saying that Spratt needs to go to the front on this stage and just drive the pace for Riolini, but I really don't see why Riolini should be driving the pace for Spratt either. And I think what also coloured this finish, this uphill finish, was Niamh Fisher-Black was taking a bit on from Vollering in the valley beforehand.
Yeah.
She was looking over to the left, and then Mavi Garcia came across, and you're responsible for your own front wheel. She crashed, and then she also, Santesteban was caught up from it, the Jayco rider, and then the Commissaire immediately put a barrage.
Yeah.
And you really rarely see an instant, because like Fisher-Black got up really quickly. It wasn't like a big crash, and like didn't Eckhoff put his shoulder back in, waited at the side of the road, and then Fisher-Black got up quickly, and then you see if she's sub 50 kgs, right, and then there's Dygat riding in front of G1, like on the flat in these open Spanish like plains, she ain't making it across, and she, I assume, would have been the one to pace for Vollering. So if Fisher-Black hadn't crashed, would the pace have been hard enough that Vollering could have launched after conserving a bit more energy? B, for Riolini, would she have had a harder pace set for her on the steeper sections by Fisher-Black, and she wouldn't have had to go to the front and set the pace herself? Two questions that are very interesting for the rest of this race. So the Vollering wins. She looks, frankly, I think the way Vollering, I know she wants a high tempo, but I think this was the first time where she's doing it wrong against Van Vleuten. I think Vollering is superior uphill compared to Van Vleuten, and isn't riding a steady, hard pace with Van Vleuten in the wheel like kind of the worst of, like that's the best of a worst case situation for Van Vleuten. She's like, okay, yeah, this is hard and harder than I want, but it's better than stop. Vollering, bang, like attacks, gets her off the wheel, and Van Vleuten on the steeper sections cannot respond. And then you have actually a gap of 3-4 seconds, and then Van Vleuten has to actually either accelerate above the threshold she wants, or at least she's off the wheel. And I feel like the gap could have been bigger if Vollering rode more stop-start.
Now, we've seen Annemiek van Vleuten evolve a bit upwards in the last few months. She started off meh.
Yeah.
She got a bit better for the Hill Classics, but she's really at a decent level now. And we look at the way that Vollering attacks her, and I agree. In the Hill Classics, the moments that Annemiek van Vleuten really capitulated were the moments where accelerations happened at the front. where there was an instant gap. And it seems like Vollering is riding every single climb where she's isolated, like she rode Mur de Huy, where she just tempos on the tempo that she thinks she can ride the entire climb and does that endlessly. But I think you need the accelerations indeed to make the initial gap to Van Vleuten, which will then lead to Van Vleuten both physically and mentally suffering from that gap. And that would be more effective, I think. But we've got this stage. We've got this fifth stage, small gap. We go towards stage 6. We'll call it P-Gate. That's a good spoiler of what might happen. And this is a stage where a lot of controversy
So much
happened.
controversy.
And it started before the broadcast, right? Because we've got these 2 climbs, which are, they've got a 6-7 kilometer valley in between, and they're in the second half of the race. But there were split ups before the first climb. How did it happen?
Well, the gap is small. Vollering's in the leader's jersey, but only 5 seconds out of ABV, and you got this 106k stage. And apparently, we see on the live ticker, we see Vollering's a minute behind a group of Van Vleuten. Like, how did that happen? And a minute too. Like, how she lost a minute in a crosswind section with SD Works power. And apparently, so there's 2 sides. First is Vollering's side. SD Works as a whole team went for a P break. Now, rule 1 is I would probably, with 1.5 hours left of racing, not take a P break unless Annemiek van Vleuten was taking a P break, if I'm SD Works. Number 1. Number 2, they take a P break. And then, if I'm reading the Vollering quotes correctly, one of her teammates had a mechanical. And she waited with the teammate that had a mechanical to fix the mechanical. Like, could you imagine stage 20 of the Tour de France to Le Markstein, 2 big climbs coming up, Pogacar's in yellow, Vergaard's Stekelengen, Trentin has a front puncture, and Pogacar says, don't worry, it's only an hour and a half left, there's not much happening, I'll just wait with Stekelengen to do a change. Absolutely not. I'm sorry, whoever had the mechanical, you're going. And apparently Reusser was in the front group, so Reusser wasn't with them. So who's the rouleur helping? Because Reusser's their best rouleur by far. Like, they didn't send the best team here, SD Works. Like, Vash was okay, but Cecchini, Schreiber, and Femke Marcus weren't that good in this race. Or, like, they're not the same as Christina Madras, for example, on the flat. They're not Reusser on the flat. And so, and then apparently, according to SD Works, Movistar just started drilling it. And according to Movistar had a plan through a crosswind section. They went into a town, came out of the town, crosswinds. Jürgen Rolantz, his sportive director, said, yep, there's crosswinds, and they know this area well, Movistar. And they said, plan is hitting the crosswinds, and they hit it. And Jumbo helped them too, and they got a good team. You know, Marcus is a big engine, and Voss too. And I don't care. I believe both of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I believe both of them. I believe what Vollering said, that they waited for the mechanical, and I think that's an absolutely terrible idea. And I think Movistar, you can't have the race leader, however long, just dangle at the back, messing about for however long, 5-10 minutes. Sorry, but this is professional racing. I don't believe in, this is not like Vollering had a crash and then they attacked. This is different. They had a self-elected P break, then waiting for a mechanical, messing about, didn't drop Reusser back. No.
It's like the stage before. Lippert had the exact same thing just before the climb, where she took a nature break before that climb, and Movistar said the day afterwards, that was a mistake. We lost time because we had a badly planned nature break. Now we get to that point that you're mentioning, Vollering versus Movistar and so forth. The part that I'm annoyed about when it comes to Vollering stakes on this, she mentioned if you want to win like this, something like that.
Yeah. Then you can do it that way.
Then you can do it that way. And that pulls me back to the Tour de France from last year, the final stage, I think, where Van Vleuten had 17 mechanicals. And that's when SD Works started pushing through, where we also were like, well, if you have 17 punctures, well...
Yeah, and this was also on on the mountains. Yeah. And so you could say, okay, well, we're not on the climbs yet. This is still before them. Now, I don't have a wind barometer or something. I don't know if there was really crosswind. Vollering said it was headwind. Whatever happened, right? Now, in the moment, you can complain. You can complain about it afterwards. In the moment, when your SD Works, you have to fix this. You have 2 climbs coming up. They're each, I'd say, 20-minute climb, maybe a bit longer for these riders. And then it's actually a long flat section afterwards. And Movistar have got this gap at 130, 140. There is Reusser in the front group, the European time trial champion, in the front group with AVV before the first climb. Vollering is driving the valley because Niamh Fisher Black can't drive the flat fast enough. Vollering is pacing full gas in the valley before the first climb with Reusser freewheeling in the front group. And it's like, now, and basically Vollering is pacing against Lippert and Patino and Floortje Mackaij and Emma Norsgaard. Like, what are SD Works doing? Because they're thinking, oh, well, we could use Reusser afterwards. She'll be fucked after the climbs. You have to use her to close the gap as much as possible so Vollering can bridge on the climbs.
Exactly. She should have been in the group the second that the valley started. The 7-kilometer valley. In that valley, she can tone down the time. And in the meanwhile, we had moments on the first part of that next climb where Vollering was basically at the front trying to get other people to pace because she wasn't going to be able to pace the entire climb. She also bridged up to the second group of Reusser then. But the problem there is, well, Reusser won't be able to help on the climb because Vollering's better on the climb. So the point at which to use Reusser is in that valley before. Even though it's only 7 kilometers, that's super valuable because, like you mentioned, she's spending energy before the climb. She's going to be spending energy on the climb. Reusser's energy will be going down on the climb. And then you get over that climb and the gap is still, well, 1 minute 40 or so at the top of that second climb. And we start the downhill and so forth. And it starts to deteriorate a bit, even though I didn't feel like Reusser was at the front of the group yet. It was until 12.5K to go that I notably saw Reusser starting to help out in that group.
But not like, okay, so the mistakes they've made up to this point, GC is still salvageable because we have Covadonga the next day. So Van Vleuten is up the road with Rialini. They drop everybody on the last climb. Rialini's sitting in the wheel. She somehow holds Van Vleuten's wheel on the descent. I don't know how she did it, but she manages to hold her wheel. Van Vleuten's doing a 1-up TT to the finish, about, with the descent, 23 kilometers of flat. First of all, okay, you've made the decision. We want to have Reusser pace the last 23, 25 minutes at this stage. Mm-hmm. It's defensible. It is defensible that you can then eat into the gap with AVV having been alone and working hard. Okay, I accept that. First of all, Reusser couldn't descend in the group.
Yeah.
She doesn't take front position on the descent, and she's losing wheels on the descent. Secondly, she is not just pulling like full gas. There is clearly either the goal is for her to be in the group at the finish. And it's like, if this was Jonathan Castroviejo or, I don't know, like pulling for Bernal chasing Damiano Caruso, it's like he's going to get on the front and just drive full gas to bring this gap down because Vollering can still win GC if the gap is 30 seconds.
Yes.
If it's 40 seconds. Covadonga is so hard. And Vollering was pulling just as much as Reusser. And they were looking to they were like, why aren't you pulling FDJ? You're in red. You're in the red jersey. Like, it's Van Vleuten's up the road. Reusser should have got on the front, full gas, death pulled on the flat to get the gap as close as possible, and Vollering pulls full gas on the flat. Don't worry about Marcus. FDJ, you're going to kill him on Covadonga tomorrow. And I'm convinced they lost GC by how they tried to operate in that group, going through and off with Canyon in the last 15Ks.
Completely agree. And I would like to add that we're getting over that climb. We're in those last 12.5 kilometers. The gap is 130 when Reusser starts pulling properly in that group. And they only lose 24 to 26 seconds, 26 seconds by the time they reach the finish line. And that's with 4 other riders helping out. So it's not like Reusser made the biggest improvement either in the last 12.5 kilometers. So the point you used was earlier. It's so true. And then afterwards, Vollering said, "Oh, it was good that we kept Reusser ahead. That was the way to go." When the interviewer asked, "Why didn't you pull her back?" That's bullshit. No offense.
Well, no. Okay, let's say we accept that. Okay, then why didn't she pull just her on the front to the point where she like drops in the last 3Ks?
Yeah.
How is she finishing in the group then? Isn't that the point?
Yeah.
So, and so that was curious. But anyway, a huge raid from Movistar. They got the tactics right, and I guess, won this stage with... No, sorry. Here's the next controversy. Rialini up the road with Van Vleuten. Rialini's been sitting in the whole time. Yeah. Now, I don't know what peak watts she could have, She somehow wins the sprint ahead of Annemiek van Vleuten, but it's a really close photo finish, and Van Vleuten finished stronger. And then we don't see the photo finish, and then they award on screen very quickly. Riolini has been told she's won, and then Van Vleuten's given the stage win trophy afterwards, and then no, it's Riolini. So that was
Terrible.
Not great for poor old Gaia, but she wins the stage, her first World Tour race that she wins. Huge talent.
Should have been second.
Yeah. Should have been a second one. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how she beat AVV here, though. So maybe it swings and roundabouts. AVV takes a minute and more than a minute and 4. She takes a minute and 10 seconds on Vollering to go 1:11 ahead of her on GC. And that's a big gap because 30 seconds, as I keep saying, could have been the difference. And we go to Covadonga today. This was a really hard mountaintop, like one of the hardest mountaintop finishes you'll see on the Women's World Tour. 13.3K, 7%. There's also kilometers in there. There's 3Ks that average 10.5, 11% in the middle of this, and then it levels off at the end. And it was a group at the bottom. Vollering, she needs to gain a minute, let's say a minute and 5 with bonuses on Annemiek van Vleuten. And it was kind of curious because, first of all, they weren't pacing, and then Fisher Black goes to the front, but Vollering attacks Fisher Black, Benji. And then Fisher Black had Annemiek van Vleuten behind her, who was also like stressing about a flat tire or the car come up. And Fisher Black was, she was kind of trying to follow Vollering. And I was like, back van Vleuten off the wheel. And Riolini's just right there with Vollering, with Sprout obviously not doing a lead out for Riolini. But I don't really, I mean, that aside, I mean, this climb just showed how good Vollering is.
Yep.
But also how much of a disaster the day before was, because she really should have won GC at this race.
Yep, she should have won GC at this race, and I think SD-Works will be kicking themselves. Well, they won't. They're kicking Movistar over it, but they should be kicking themselves over this because they lost the race by not responding. Even if P-break happens, what was it? Not P-break. P-gate happens. Even if P-gate happens, the response was what lost them in the end. Because it's not by like a minute that they lose, it's by a very limited amount of seconds. And the factor there as well is that Niamh Fisher Black moment, for example, I do believe that that's valuable to take in for them, because if Vollering is going and Niamh Fisher Black is ahead of Van Vleuten, she should open up the gap. And the only moment that happens is when Fisher Black herself starts dropping. That's when it happens. And then you see the value that has, because Van Vleuten has to close down a gap of 10 meters or 5 meters. I'm exaggerating, 5 meters towards the wheel of those two riders that are ahead. So that's how valuable those tiny things can be, because then the initial gap has been created and Vollering can just storm on a bit while Van Vleuten has to close the gap without having draft, because draft still matters at this point. And I agree when it comes to all you've said, but I think we've spoken about Vollering being great, but I think Gaia Riolini is the best pure climber in the world.
I can't say yes or no, because she had some sort of mechanical issue on this climb, and that's what was really, I couldn't really figure it out, because she seemed to be, she basically has to get off the bike, and I was like, she dropped a chain, but why? How would she drop a chain on a 12% gradient? Because she's already in the small ring, so why would she be shifting? Did she shift too far on the limit screw on the rear? Like, it seemed like a rear derailleur issue, and that she tried to shift into an even smaller gear, and it then wouldn't shift because she was already in the smallest gear because they hit a 14% ramp, but then the limit screw, I don't know, and then she gets a push back, and that's an adrenaline burst, and then you've had to do an extra effort, and then she has to do the rest of the steep section in too big a gear. She's grinding, and she can't really seem to change the rear derailleur. She can change into the bigger ring, so I'm inclined to agree. If they did a Mortarolo mountain time trial, I think Riolini wins ahead of anybody in the world. So I guess I do agree, but could she have beaten Vollering on this climb? I'm less convinced just because of the characteristics of this climb. But when Riolini is the one, Vollering is just paced choo-choo style the whole time. Yeah. She's not re-attacked Van Vleuten, even though Van Vleuten is trying to ride to power. She's riding Froome style to power. But Vollering's also riding a steady pace, and it only takes Riolini driving it hard on a steeper section that releases Van Vleuten, and then Vollering takes over. And then there's this really fast, foggy descent at the end of Covadonga. The gap has gone to 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40 seconds, 45 seconds into this fog. She needs a minute 5 to win by Vollering. and she gains more time on that descent ahead of Van Vleuten. And the last little run-up really cooks Van Vleuten and Riolini, actually. They both struggle, whereas Vollering had more on the legs. Vollering wins the stage, 11 seconds ahead of Riolini, 56 seconds ahead of Van Vleuten, but it's not enough. Van Vleuten holds on to win 9 seconds ahead of Vollering in GC. Riolini moves up 9 spots into third. Marcus finishes fourth ahead of Bauernfeind. Muzic sixth, moves up. Lebu actually drops 3 spots. She had cracked on the climb pretty badly, trying to follow Bauernfeind or Muzic, I think. Magnaldi 8th, Mavi Garcia 9th, and Nuvia Doma, despite being in an early move with Royce, which we forgot to mention, which didn't really help SD Works at all, frankly, because Movistar controlled on the flat. She finishes 10th. And yeah, an interesting, actually, not just an interesting, that was a cracking finish.
Yep.
Kind of thanks to the catastrophe of the day before.
Yep, that was a very good stage. And not just the stage, just the controversy around it did make it a bit more interesting, I won't lie. But towards the Tour de France Femme, this is a great prelude because Annemiek van Vleuten is not out there destroying everybody. Vollering's kind of out there being the rider to beat now. And you've got these riders like Riolini who are the pure climbers who might not be that perfect for this specific race, knowing that the Tourmalet is like that one climbing stage that will destroy all climbing stages. But there's so much other stuff happening around, like the time trial that's being thrown in right now. So I'm definitely looking forward to the Tour de France Femme. It was a great edition of La Vuelta. But anything more to say about it, or shall I give you an update about the Giro that we need to mention?
Oh, no, just I'm really excited for the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. And also there is like, okay, is this a Grand Tour? It's 7 stages. Can you call it a Grand Tour? Let's park
in women's cycling, yeah.
But if you park that debate and say there's another 2 Spanish World Tour stage races pretty much back to back now on the women's calendar, they go and do Basque Country and then Burgos. Let me check. There's like 3, Burgos. So 5 days after the Vuelta finishes, so next Friday, let's say, they start Itzulia, and that's 3 stages. And then after that, they do Vuelta a Burgos, which is 4 stages, and also has a mountaintop finish. And I think all these hitters are doing it. Definitely Van Vleuten will do it because it's important for Movistar, one would think. And Vollering's on the provisional. But yeah, I cannot wait for Tourmalet in the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. I'm also liking... I don't know, this was much more interesting than... And it's it is more interesting than Van Vleuten just dropping everybody at the base of Covadonga and winning GC by 5 minutes, let's be honest. Like, the competitive tension today with Riolini in the mix, with Vollering beating her, with Van Vleuten hanging on. I'm sure it's more unpleasant for Van Vleuten, but as a spectacle, today's stage was one of the best women's mountain stages. It was way better than the Tour de France Femme mountain stages last year.
For sure. The only thing that made it spicy there was the mechanicals that Van Vleuten was having.
Yeah.
But I agree. That's what made it a good stage as well today, a very good stage. But like I preluded just a second ago, a bit of an update when it comes to the Giro d'Italia. I've also sent it over to you so we can take a look as well. The crash. There's a perpetrator selected by the internet, as in there's a helicopter shot where Grove uses his hand to move Ballerini to the side, to the right. Akkerman, therefore, behind Groves has to move up as well. So it's not Akkerman's fault. If Groves moves Ballerini with his hand, it depends on how hard he does it, but that's a sketchy move, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's against the rules to take your hands off the bars and to move somebody. And yeah, and seeing what Remco didn't really break or react too much, so I retract what I said about Remco. He actually very, very narrowly avoided Ballerini chopping him because of that move across. So Remco just had to take
response.
He just had to take evasive action, and then the DSM rider moving up on the right hand. I mean, Roglic is really close to this too on the right hand side, but the concertina effect just cooks everyone behind. So yeah, I mean, you can't take your hands off the bars and touch other riders. I mean, AVV did it on the climb yesterday to Marcus. MVDP did it to Pogacar on the Poggio to do his attack, right? Or Degana. I mean, it happens and is unpunished a lot of the time, but yeah. I mean, that's pretty grainy. I can't see if he takes his hands off. I also can't see the few frames before. It's like, what if Ballerini is pinching in on his front wheel and he's protecting himself? That kind of changes the character of it too. This starts a little bit late, so you're missing some context. He's already kind of falling Ballerini. But yeah, shame to see people losing time, but this is, this happens in every Grand Tour.
But it shouldn't.
I mean, it shouldn't, but unless you take away Grand Tour bunch sprints, it's going to, like, people riding next to each other 70 kph is what's going to happen. But yeah, people shouldn't take their hands off the bars, but I can't really see it clear enough. Maybe I need to get better glasses or find the H. Yeah.
They got to get better cameras.
Yeah, I mean, I am surprised that heli shot's so grainy. Like, this is the final 3K or 4K of a bunch sprint. But anyway, long pod today. We'll be back with stage 3 recap of the Giro tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us some feedback for the live stream. I think it was better today. Maybe Luke will disagree from chopping and changing, but I hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed La Vuelta, and we'll see you at the stage tomorrow. Ciao.